Okay, so we are now on to some geometry type of questions. I want to remind you of some basic geometry facts. That the perimeter is the distance around an object. That a rectangle has two pairs of opposite congruent sides. We talked the last time about how congruent means same size and shape, and it applies to the shape. Numbers are equal. Shapes are congruent. Okay. Three angles of a triangle always add up to 180. Complementary, two angles that add up to 90. Supplementary, two angles that add up to 180. Very important. Some people forget which one's which. Complementary, supplementary. As the letter C comes before the letter S in the alphabet, 90 comes before 180 in the number bet, if you will. So therefore, complementary means 90, supplementary means 180. Last but not least, and we're not doing these this week, but we will get into them next week. Next week we're going to do a number of consecutive integer questions and some other number-related word problems. And another type of geometry question we're going to introduce is an isosceles triangle. Isosceles triangle has two equal sides and two equal angles. We often call them the base angles that are equal. Okay, so let's get started on some geometry word problems. We talked about them before the test. We taught you one last week. I think you're ready to go on your own with this. Go ahead, stop and start. Okay, so always like to draw a picture. It says here that the length is 3 less than 4 times the width. Remember, last shall be first, first shall be last. So here's the 3 less than 4 times the width, 4w minus 3. And keep in mind, this is the w on the left. There's also a w on the right, even though we don't bother to write it. And there's a 4w minus 3 on the bottom, though we don't bother to write it. I need to set up an equation, and I have to remember one of the first things on the list we just went over, which is namely that the perimeter is the distance around an object, so I got to add up all 4 sides. So here's my w for the left. I just yawned for a second. That made me jerk my hand. W on the left, 4w minus 3 on the top. W on the right, 4w minus 3 on the bottom. And once you look at that, you talk about the foundational equations we spoke of the last few lessons, and this re-emphasized this at the beginning of lesson video 1 today. You want to get this is a same side, same operation situation. So 1w and 4w make 5w's. Another w makes a 6w, and 4 more w's makes a 10w. 3 negatives and 3 more negatives make 6 negatives. So I have 10 w's and I have 6 negatives equals 44. Adding 6 to both sides, I get 50. Dividing by 10, I get 5. So the width is 5 and the length is, to get the length, I got to plug it in. 4 times 5 is 20, minus 3 is 17. What's the area? 5 times 17 is 85, because length times width is area. Okay, let's try the next one. Go ahead. I'll go over it with you in a minute. Okay, so we mentioned always drawing that rectangle first. There it is. It says that the length is 5 less than 3 times the width. So last shall be first, first shall be last. The 5 is first here, last here, minus 5, and then the 3w goes first. So 3w is also the bottom, w is also on the right. Some people express this formula like 2 times the 1w and then 2 times 3w minus 5. You can do that too, that's fine. So I get w on the left, 3w minus 5 on the top. W on the right, 3w minus 5 on the bottom. Add them all up, you get 44. That's 1, 4, 5, 8 w's. 5 negatives and 5 more negatives is 10 negatives. So 8w minus 10 is 62. Adding 10 to both sides, 8w is 72. Dividing by 8, and I get w is 9. Okay. Plugging the 9 back in, 3 times 9 is 27, minus 5 is 22. So the width is 9, the length is 22, and if I multiply them, I get the area. 22 times 9 is 198. Okay? All right. Again, we taught all of this already. We've only started to teach. Oh, you know what? I really didn't teach you how to do the bottom one here. So I want you to do the top one on your own. Then I'll go over the bottom one with you. And then you'll do both of them on the next slide. Go ahead. You're on your own on the top one. Stop and start. Okay, so one angle of a triangle is 3 times another. The measure of the third angle is 20 more than the smallest angle. Find the angles. So there's my triangle. Okay, here's my small angle n. The next one is 3 times as big, so 3n. And the measure of the third angle is 20 more than the smallest guy, so that's n plus 20. Of course, the n is smaller than 3n. 3n means 3 times n, so it's got to be bigger. These numbers are positive. Okay, add up all three angles. The n at top, the 3n on the bottom left, and the n plus 20 bottom right. You got to get a 180 degrees count von count. So 1n and 3n is 4n's, and another n is 5n, plus 20 is 180. Subtracting 20 from both sides, 5n is 160. Dividing by 5n is 32. Ding, 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 ding. I didn't answer the question yet because Mr. Braze used to say, oh, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for all the angles. First one's 32. The next one is 3n, which is 3 times 32. That's 96. And the last one is the 32 plus the 20, which is 52. And as we mentioned last time, one of the beautiful things about math is there is no arguing. Just add up your three results, 32, 96, 52. You get 180, which you do. You know you did it correctly. Okay. So for the next question, half of it is familiar, half of it is unfamiliar. First, it says two complementary angles are in the ratio of 2 to 3. The unfamiliar part is the ratio part. The familiar part is the complementary part. I know this is going to add up to 90. Whenever you read ratio, just think X or N. It means they share something in common, okay? You don't know what that common thing is, so we're going to call it N. So what I get is that the two angles are going to be 2N and 3N. So as soon as you see the word ratio, you just think N and change 2 to 3 to 2N, 3N. And complementary means adds up to 90. The actual performing of this equation is really simple. Same side situation, about as easy as they come. 2N plus 3N is 5N. Is equal to 90. Dividing by 5, N is 18. Now, it still doesn't tell me the measure of the largest angle. The largest angle is the 3N guy. So, and the smallest is the 2N guy. So, just to show you, the two angles are 36, 2 times 18. That's what 2N means, 2 times N. And 54, 3 times N. So, the answer is 54. That's the bigger angle. Okay? Now, you guys are going to try the next one. But before we do that, I really want you to focus in on the idea of 2 to 3, 2N, 3N, 2 to 3, 2N, 3N. Whenever you see that word ratio, that should be popping into your head as the way to your strategy for solving the equation. Okay, you got a triangle of a triangle problem, and you got another complementary ratio question. Do them both, okay? And then I'll go over the correct answers with you. All right, so I assume that you did stop and start, and it's time for me to go over these questions with you. First one's about a geometry shape. Always like to draw a triangle. So it says the first angle is N because I don't know what it is. The next one is 3 times another. It doesn't say times, it should. That's 3N. And the last one is the measure of the third angle is 40 more than the smallest angle. So that's N plus 40. If I add them all up, I get 180. N and 3N are 4N, plus another N is 5N. 5N plus 40 is 180. Subtracting the 40 from both sides, 5N is 140, right? 180 minus 40 is 140. Dividing by 5, and I get N is 28. Plugging them back in, if N is 28, 3 times 28 is 84. And 28, it should say plus 40. I wrote 68, but I didn't change it because this was off the other slide. 28 plus 40, this right here should say 40, is 68, okay? And then add them up, 28, 84, 68, bingo, lights flash, bells ring, that's 180. All right, last question of the day, at least the last mathematical question of the day, or where you have to do calculations and equation solving skills. The measure of two complementary angles are in the ratio of 3 to 7. What did we say before about seeing that word ratio? You think what? N or X. So that means that the two angles are 2N and 7N, complementary. So if you add them up, or 3N and 7N, sorry. If you add them up, you get 90. 3N and 7N are 10N, dividing by 10, N is 9. And 3 times 9 is 27. 7 times 9 is 63. In this case, it wanted the smallest angle, and that is 27. Okay, so we've given you some applications, a way to apply those problem-solving skills, and we gave you a little bit of a new twist today when you see this word ratio that you put the N in there. Those are usually the really easy ones because there's about half the work to do. All right, a little bit of review. What is the percent proportion? Percent over 100 equals part over whole. Part over whole. The word is generally indicates part, and the word of generally indicates the whole. If the probability of rain is 15%, what is the probability of no rain? 85%, right? 100 minus 15 is 85, or 15 plus 85 is 100. Perimeter is the what around an object? Distance, good. A rectangle has two pairs of opposite. Best answer is congruent sides. If you put equal sides, we can live with that. Remember, congruence is shapes, equals is numbers. That's when you apply them. Kind of like before when we talked about meeting the president, you should be formal in your speech, but when you meet your friends, hey, bud, what's going on? So in this particular case, we're dealing with a shape, rectangle, so we normally go with the word congruent. Three angles of a triangle add up to 180. Complementary, two angles that add up to 90. Supplementary, two angles that add up to 180. And we didn't do too much supplementary the last 2 days. We'll do more next week. And we haven't done any isosceles yet, but it's coming. Isosceles triangle has two equal sides and two equal angles. All right, we have done our review of the potential problem areas on our last test. Next week, we'll kick it up a notch. Like Emerald says, bam!